Welcome everyone to the NAILBA BGA Business Practices Initiative. We want to thank Dan Labert and the NAILBA board for a great conference. And once again, we'd like to thank North American for sponsoring the Business Practices Initiative. I'm Tiffany Markarian, Managing Director and Founder of Advantus Marketing, and I'm joined by my fellow panelists, Brian Haney, who's a founding member and Vice President at the Haney Group. Additionally, we're joined by Eric Griffin. He's the Executive Vice President of Financial Services at the Cason Group. And we're joined by no stranger to NAILBA, who does content all throughout the year, and that's Ed Easterly, and he's a founding member of Hoffman, Hlavac, and Easterly, a labor and employment relations law firm. So let's take a step back and what is the NAILBA BGA Business Practices Initiative? Well, it's designed for mature BGAs and NextGen leaders, and it has the sole purpose of helping BGAs and their teams overcome historical sticking points, capture business and marketplace opportunities that they've been trying to get to for some time, help your teams adapt to changes in the insurance industry, and also to manage threats to the business. Now, the BGA Business Practices Initiative has several components to it. Each year, we choose very carefully chosen topics that are important for BGAs, and this has been a year like no other, but we still want to grow and we still want to manage threats. So available today on nailba.org is the first part, and that's the Business Practices Guide. And this is where each of our panelists that are joining me today have provided content on 4 key topics that we'll go through in just a moment. There's a white paper on each topic that you can take back to your firms as a guide and share with your teams. And also, each of us will be doing workshops on our respective topics in the coming months. And you'll get feedback from NAILBA on when those will be, and we'll give you the dates today. Let me just say that this guide is designed for managing principals and executive leaders, because as you'll see, the 4 topics that were chosen today are both marketplace topics, advisor relationship topics, but also topics that are more at an executive level. So as a managing principal, you'll want to look at this guide first, digest it, and then determine which ones are appropriate to share with your teams. So the first one is the new rules for approaching advisors. This is marketplace and branding. How do we engage more advisors or clients if that's your direct-to-consumer business model? The second topic is adding value and integrating into the advisor's practice. So both of those topics, we widely encourage you to share with your teams back at home. We'll also take a deeper look inside of a leadership culture, which we're so grateful to have the Cason Group sharing some of their leadership best practices, much like many legacy firms through NAILBA. And then finally, like we said, it's been a year like no other, and social media for some people has been a place to share opinions. We want to know, how do we manage any social media violations in the workplace? I'll be taking the first topic, and this is the new rules for approaching advisors. What we're trying to focus on here is that traditional messaging and branding typically focused on the BGA's point of view. And you might say, well, isn't that what we're supposed to do? In reality, the new rules are about when you approach a niche market, you've got to speak from their point of view. Let's look at this more closely. I like to call traditional BGA approaches, use a lot of the P words: products, processes, production, placement ratios, payouts, carrier platforms, premiums, their professionalism, and people. These are all commendable. They're wonderful attributes about a firm, but they're all about you. And if we're trying to engage advisors or different marketplaces, we have to speak from their point of view. Not every advisor is insurance enabled or it's a core expertise. Some have it as an ancillary expertise, and some, like RIAs, if they're fee only, they may discuss insurance, but they're not processing cases for compensation. So a lot of these Ps could turn off a relationship with an advisor because they see you focused on you and not necessarily understanding their business model. I would like to add one more P to this list, and I like to call this promotion. So as a marketing specialist, I have a lot of financial advisors, insurance professionals, BGAs come and say, we really need help with promotion. We've got our blogs or posts or email blasts, but we're not quite getting the traction. I think we have a promotion problem. And I can tell you the financial services and insurance industry does not have a promotional problem. It's a positioning problem. And this is where we have to discover more and speak from the advisor's point of view, meaning they focus on outcomes that are important to their business. important things like their business model, changes to their business model, the ways that they have interacting with clients and philosophies. Merchandisers focus on products, and that's why we want to try to stay away from the P's. It will probably come up in conversation. We're saying just don't lead with it. Relationship managers focus on outcomes. Those outcomes are going to be different for different advisors, and they have to be relevant. I've mentioned this before, but if one of your markets is RIAs, wealth advisors, wirehouses, et cetera, many of them work off of recurring revenue. It's not all about product, it's about advice. They're not producers, they see themselves as advisors, and they may not be commission focused. So we have to be very careful in speaking their outcomes. Now, the business practices guide that will be available today takes a deep dive on this. Here's an example of outcomes. You help RIAs complete their financial planning. You help them honor their fiduciary role. You help them enhance their client experience and talk about insurance without trepidation. Now, one other market we really want to focus on today is property and casualty, because the traditional approach is insurance professionals may call a P&C firm, say, hey, we're like-minded. We both focus on insurance. Let's get you licensed and we'll increase your revenues. Well, P&C has been in a firestorm, specifically because of COVID, but this has been building up for a long time. Those that focus on auto and home, maybe there's not a lot of claims, not a lot of people on the road, more people at home. But P&C firms are realizing it can be sold without a broker online. So they're focusing on commercial accounts. And like RIAs, P&C firms work off of recurring revenue and renewals. So it's about retaining clients. Then comes COVID. And if you're focusing on commercial lines, you compare that to life insurance or DI or long-term care, the claims process is very different. There's way more gradations and exclusions, especially with COVID. If frontline workers contract the virus, is that a covered workers' comp? If business interruption insurance happens, a lot of pandemics are not covered by that. So these firms are trying to be risk management, risk control consultants, take care of their clients. They don't necessarily have the time to address other needs, even if they want to. So the outcomes for them is not trying to treat this as get your people licensed. It's so easy. We can do this. That's like someone saying to you as a BGA, get your P&C license. It's so easy. You can do this. It's very different. The outcomes that speak to them are you help us with some of the thorns, which is addressing other needs that we not be able to do. Many of our producers may want to get licensed, but can we punt the ball to you? And that way we address more client questions. We create more wins for clients where we're trying to solve some of these business interruption claims. You can help us create wins by solving the other risks. We'll also be covering benefits advisors and independent and career advisors as well, all with step-by-step outcomes to help evolve your branding and messaging and capture more opportunities to sit at the same side of the table. Again, this white paper on approaching advisors and the new rules is available in the Business Practices Guide. And I will be doing a workshop to really break down this topic on February 2nd at 12:30 Eastern Time, and details will follow. I'd now like to bring in Brian Haney. As I mentioned, he is a founding member and vice president at the Haney Company. But what that means to you is he's also an advisor. And in his firm, they have advisors for property and casualty benefits, retirement planning, brokerage, wealth advisory. He is going to speak to you now about once we've engaged an advisor, how do we add value, onboard, elevate that experience, and think like an equity partner? Brian, you're speaking from the advisor's point of view. Welcome.
Thanks, Tiffany, for the intro, and thank you, NAILBA, for having me as a part of this amazing Engage experience. I am thrilled to be a part of your conference, and I look forward to sharing with you about how you can add value to advisors you're working with or the advisors that you want to approach. As she mentioned, we are living in remarkable times. Not only is more than half of the world's population under the age of 30, but Facebook now has more users than the entire population of China, making it the largest population on Earth. In fact, 53% of millennials say they would rather lose their sense of smell than lose their technology. Society has changed, the industry has changed, and now more than ever, the integration of BGAs with advisors and insurance professionals needs to change along with it. As an independent financial advisor myself who operates a diverse practice that includes employee benefits, includes property and casualty, retirement plans, and the more traditional life, disability, long-term care, annuities, you name it, I recognize that my success invariably depends on a lot of the partners that I work with. However, the challenge I face many times is finding the right partners and BGAs because while many have approached me to receive my business, very few actually understand my business. So perhaps that's a great place to start. I want to help you have what Stephen Covey likes to call a paradigm shift so that you can develop a better and more strategic approach to working with advisors like me. One that will not only win you business, but will elevate the experience for everyone involved. So let me start by telling you the 3 critical elements to success. Ones that, if you get them right, can catapult you forward, but ones, if you get wrong, can not just harm your current business, but wreck your future business prospects as well. The first key element is to know your audience, and Tiffany just mentioned this. This doesn't mean just know what they do, know their website, have a business card, and connect with them on LinkedIn, although you should do all those things. I'm talking about understanding their professional value proposition and what allows them to be successful in the marketplace. This is perhaps the most vital change that I would encourage a BGA to make. Get out of the assumption mentality and become like Columbo, for those who are old enough to get that TV reference. Act like you don't know and become genuinely interested in learning about your advisors and prospective advisors. Tiffany talked about getting your messaging right when approaching prospective advisors. Don't assume you can help. Instead, talk collaboratively about how you might envision supporting them and see if that fits what they need. Then, once they agree to work with you, keep learning. What is it like to have a day in the life of their practice? What do they do to win business and build their practice? What do their clients like most about them? Arming yourself with this kind of knowledge will make integrating into their practices much easier, more powerful, and more successful. The second key element is to act differently. Now that we're thinking differently, it's time to transition to action. Instead of taking the approach of a service or solution provider, think like you're an equity partner with a stake in the practice's success. What can you do to make the practice more successful and not just grow your piece of the pie? What kind of investment are you willing to make? How can you come alongside them and really see their market value grow? When working with the advisor and their team, the third critical element is to align yourself with the practice's business development model, not just become a back-end product delivery system. With over $5 billion of investments being made in the fintech space last year alone, a trend that I guarantee you is only going to grow, advisors may no longer need BGAs to provide product delivery services since they may actually be able to get that electronically or through other means now or in the future. So to really add value, you need to have a strong point of service model and have your entire team serve as consultants to help cultivate and place the cases that are out of the advisor's comfort zone. Find a way to enhance their brand and their marketing, either through social media synergy or key client resources. If you make what you do to attract business better and easier, they'll see you as an indispensable partner, not just one of a dozen service providers that they can choose from. To take you a little bit further down the rabbit hole, the following questions are critical to discuss with your team, particularly as you seek to elevate your advisor experience and add value to the advisor partnership. How does your team adapt to the advisor's business model? As we heard from Tiffany, this will often be different if you're working with a PNC versus an RIA. Does our manner of doing business align with what our advisors in those markets have said that they need? Is the advisor's focus on insurance lines a core focus or ancillary to their main business? How can we better integrate and align with the advisor's business model? How do we onboard and make the process understandable and easy for advisors? Remind your team that many advisors will not be familiar with carrier applications or paperwork, especially RIAs or advisors who have insurance as an ancillary focus. and what represents a real win to the different types of advisors you're trying to approach. Again, it may not be commissions only. Oftentimes, most of the firms out there want to elevate their own client experience and deliver substantial value for themselves. Whether they make money or not becomes secondary to that purpose. Did I advance the client experience? So are you getting excited? I know I am. You don't want to miss the rest of the materials, believe me, and I will cover key strategies for working with financial professionals, as I mentioned, from a variety of different practice types. Once you finish reading Tiffany's strategies for approaching the different advisor markets, my white paper in the Business Practices Guide will then give you the critical success factors for integrating in their different business models. As I said, P&C firms, broker-dealers and their advisors, career agents, independent RIAs, employee benefit practices, and independent insurance agents and advisors as well. We are going to run the entire gambit, and I promise you, I'm not going to leave anyone out. In my white paper and presentation, I will dive deeper into the many practical ways that you can understand those audiences, engage differently, and build true lasting partnerships that are successful for years to come. Can't wait to see you there.
Thanks so much, Brian. And now I'd like to bring in Eric Griffin, a member of Libra, a longstanding legacy BGA, like many of you watching today. So many of you have a wonderful leadership culture, and many of you have also had to make changes with COVID. Perhaps you had a very intimate firm and you all work together day to day, and now we're spread into some virtual environments. Perhaps you're growing into other states and you're not day to day together. Or you're trying to keep your culture intact with hiring the right people, developing people, as well as helping to advance the performance of all the talent that you have. And we're so grateful, Eric Griffin, that you've joined us as the Executive Vice President of Financial Services at the Cason Group, and also managing a team of 10 regional consultants in multiple states, building relationships with advisors, solving core needs, and also imparting strategies and development across all the entities within your firm. So thank you for giving us a deeper look inside your leadership culture.
Yeah, thanks a ton, Tiffany. It's been a privilege working with you for a number of years, and I always feel like I walk away both a better person and a more capable leader from the projects we worked on together. So thanks for having me. Thanks also to NAILBA just for choosing me to be on this panel. Been coming to NAILBA for a number of years, and there's a lot of folks that have been incredibly successful that I look up to. And in some ways, it's the premier gathering of leaders in our industry. So to say that I'm humbled and honored to be on this panel to discuss leadership among a bunch of capable leaders would be an understatement. So thanks a ton for having me. When Tiffany approached me about doing this session a number of months ago, I had just finished doing a presentation on a similar topic. And one of the things that I mentioned in that presentation is that I interview a lot of people in my role. In those interviews, one of the questions that I'll always ask is I just ask a candidate to tell me what their dream job or ideal job would be if they could script it. I don't remember a single time when the answer to that question was the dream job was to be in the life insurance business. And I don't think I would believe them if they told me that that was their dream job. And yet, like the folks on this call, and like the folks who are attending NAILBA, we all believe in it. In fact, the first death benefit that I actually helped deliver was to my mother-in-law when my father-in-law passed away. So I'm incredibly passionate about this business, about this industry, and about leadership. And I want to work hard along with the folks who are in attendance to this conference to flip the script. I think we've got a huge opportunity to bring in new talent to the business and make life insurance be on that short list of dream jobs. So I'm looking forward to participate. We're going to cover a lot of different topics. We're going to dive in deeply on 4 different topics. And as a follow-up to this presentation, NAILBA is going to post both a workbook that we've created. We'll also be hosting a breakout session. But the 4 primary topics that we're going to cover are hiring individuals so that their talent matches your culture. We're going to talk about developing the new talent that you bring into your business. We're going to be talking about leading a team that has a variety of personalities. And then occasionally, how do you deal with that person on your team that's struggling? So just a few tidbits on each one of those points. When it comes to matching talent to your culture, I think leadership can account for a lot of different things, but it'll have a hard time overcoming hiring the wrong folks to your team. If you're going to hire talent to match your culture, it actually doesn't start with the hiring. It starts with defining your culture. I know many companies, including the Cason Group, have some combination of purpose statements, mission statements, vision statements, value statements, maybe even many of you who are in attendance to the conference. The question is what you do with them once you've created them. And I can tell you at the Cason Group, they are fully ingrained in our culture. It's what defines our culture. We have them printed and hanging throughout the office. We regularly quiz our folks in one-on-one meetings and team meetings and corporate meetings. And we ask them to recite any of those things on the spot because we want our folks to know them. When we hire, we also say that we want to hire folks that fit our culture first. And then we also want them to be able to do the job and get a result. But we don't want somebody who can get a result who doesn't fit our culture. We're able to do that because we've clearly defined the type of culture that we want to have. So that's the first thing that we're going to talk about. The second thing we're going to discuss is developing that new talent. I don't think it's any surprise or a secret to anybody who comes to NAILBA that we've not done a great job as an industry of bringing new talent in. We did a study at the Cason Group a couple of years ago and realized that the average age of our clients were 58, and that's likely pretty consistent across the board. We've been committed in the 30-year history of the Cason Group to developing talent and bringing them in right out of college rather than hiring away from competitors or hiring folks with industry experience. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't hire somebody with experience, but our hallmark has been on hiring folks and bringing them into the business and teaching them the way that we want them to learn it. That starts at the Cason Group with our sales training program. It's actually a 9 to 12-month training program that we're going to talk about in the session. It's what I was hired into 23 years ago, so I believe in it. It's a comprehensive training program that we start our folks learning all the different internal roles that support a BGA, from case design to quoting to case management to underwriting. Then we transition them into sales. And once they finish all their sales training, that includes a lot of mock sales calls with folks on the team that's awkward for everybody involved. Once they finish that part of the training, we actually launch them into one of our geographic territories. But I can tell you the training doesn't stop there. It's an ongoing, never-ending process. It's a significant time and financial investment, as you might imagine, but I think it's well worth you'll get the return on that investment if you stick with it in the long run. We'll walk through each one of those steps of our training program in our session. The third thing we're going to talk about is leading a team with a variety of personalities. And I think this is where leadership and management really differ. Management's setting a plan and then making sure that that plan is executed, which is super important. We believe in that. But I think where leadership kicks in is in recognizing that it's people that are fulfilling or executing that plan and not robots. And also recognizing that all people are different. For us, it starts just with caring for our people, caring for the people that we've hired, caring for the people that we've invested in. It's recognizing that they all come from different backgrounds. When we're training them, they're at different places. It's recognizing they have different strengths and that they bring different things to the table, and then helping them use those gifts that they have to accomplish the greater goal and ultimately drive a result. So while we have a standard training plan, ongoing leadership requires a customized approach to account for all those different variables. And then finally, the fourth point that we're going to discuss, if you've been in leadership for any given period of time, you're going to run across somebody who struggles. So we're going to talk about how we deal with that. And honestly, for the Cason Group, this is where the model comes full circle. Starting with the first bullet point that we just discussed, when it comes to hiring people to fit your culture, one of our company values is being results oriented. And so when we hire folks who are results oriented, they care about hitting goals. The fact is, though, is not everybody's going to hit their goals all the time. But I can tell you, I don't remember a time when I had to talk with a team member who missed a goal that wasn't more stressed about missing that goal than I was. Without fail, when you hire people who are culture fits, who are committed to your company values, and you do a good job of setting and communicating clear expectations, the individuals that you hire are committed to hitting that goal. So when they're falling behind the goal, we spend a lot of time going back and looking at the why. We have an activity-based formula for our sales folks that we really believe in, that we've been operating under for about 30 years. And we can almost always tie somebody's struggles back to missing one of the variables in that formula. So in the session, we're going to go through each one of those variables and take a closer look at those. Wow, that was a lot. I'm really looking forward to the session. I hope that you can join us. When we do it on the 19th at 12:30, it's going to be facilitated by Tiffany. So I'm excited she's going to be a part of that. On the call with me too, I'm going to have two of our regional consultants, Greg Hudgens, who's been with us for 18 years. He actually graduated from our sales training program and is our most seasoned and most successful regional consultant. We're also going to have Chase Clack, who's on the other end of the spectrum. We hired Chase out of college 2 years ago. He graduated from our training program about 1.5 years ago. and launched into one of our geographic territories, actually in Atlanta, and he's been doing a great job with us. So I hope to see you on the 19th. And again, I'm grateful to be a part of it. Tiffany, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Eric. And you have 12 pages in the white paper of not just those 4 topics, but managing W-2 employees versus 1099, bridging relationships between marketing and ops and sales within an organization, and virtual hiring as well. So we thank you so much. And now I'd like to bring in Ed Easterly, again, representing Hoffman, Hlavac, and Easterly, a labor and employment relations law firm. We know that this year has had a lot between COVID and an election year and market downtowns and critical social conversations. And where social media is really meant to be connections with people, it has been used to share opinions and views, sometimes grievances. And what is the line between personal social media use, company social media use, especially when advisors or clients may be connected to our associates on their personal social media? What are the boundaries and what constitutes violations and how do we handle them? So thanks so much, Ed, for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for the terrific introduction and for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful panel. That was a lot of terrific information that we just received that was beneficial to all of the businesses and help them grow. My job now is to scare you into doing things that won't harm your business. So I am always the doom and gloom person. So what do I use social media for? Well, I use it for the same reason a lot of people do, the pandering pictures of my child. All right. We also use it as a business to promote our business. We put blogs up. We use it to try and inform our clients. But in the last 7 months, since the world has kind of changed, a lot of issues have arisen. And those issues predate kind of the whole pandemic, but they have been exacerbated by people working from home, from using their phones more. All of these things have kind of increased in the last several months because employers have not had the ability to monitor their employees as much as they generally would have. What do other people use social media for? We're going to focus a lot when I give my more in-depth session on what do people use it for? What do businesses use it for? How is it impacting business? But as a general matter, what do businesses use social media for? Well, Tiffany touched on it during her session, promoting the business, right? Promoting your business, having your employees post, how you post, making sure that your clients understand what issues are impacting them. But there are other ways that social media can be used by businesses, and they will potentially create issues. What are some of those ways that businesses use social media? Well, recruiting and background checks. We are seeing this more and more in the legal aspect, that businesses are using social media to recruit individuals, not just to post we have a job opening, but to actually start that interview process. So there are legal issues that come into play when you do that. What else do businesses use it for? Retention. Monitoring and discipline is the big one, though. We're monitoring what our employees are posting. Right? In that example that's on the slide, an employee posts that they hate their boss and their boss sees it. So an employer is monitoring what an employee is posting on social media, which can lead to disciplinary actions. And how exactly can an employer discipline an employee for what they post? That's the biggest issue here. What do employees use it for? Well, we would like them to use it to promote the business, but in reality, most of them are using to defame either the business's clients, to harass other employees or general groups of employees, to kill time at work, which is a bigger problem now that the majority of people are actually working from home and not in the workplace, and just general stupidity. A lot of people post things on the internet without thinking about it, without saying, well, what impact is this going to have on me and my business and my future employment? So those are the things that people use it for. How is it beneficial? So with that, we want to discuss some of the issues that are beneficial to a business. You get the information straight from a source. You know what your employee is posting. A lot of times pre-social media, we had kind of the he said, she said, he said issues where we had to take somebody's word for it. Now, as a general matter, you're able to get that information and show it to the employee and say, this is you and you posted this, correct? You understand that that was wrong. So you're getting that information straight from the source. You're also able to conduct kind of a pre-interview interview with individuals to see what their beliefs are, see what they think about your business potentially from what they post on social media. It's free, it's easy, you can use it to protect your business. A lot of employees, again, it goes back to the stupidity issue, may post protected information, confidential information about a business on social media. So by monitoring that, an employer can protect its business. It can also take steps to protect its employees and to establish a legal basis to take action against an employee if they are engaging in a harassment or discrimination in the workplace. So if I have an employee who's harassing one of their coworkers in the workplace, we are aware of that now potentially before we otherwise would have been because they've posted it on social media. We are aware that they're posting inappropriate things on social media before we otherwise would have been aware of those in the past. With all of that said, social media is great for a lot of things. It provides the promotion. It can help you protect your business. It can help you weed out those difficult employees. But there's always that but, right? There's that big but that says, well, what are the issues? And the biggest issue here is that employers have access to protected information when they otherwise wouldn't have it. So let's take, for example, that recruiting and interview process. If an employer, generally taking out the social media aspect of it, just brings somebody in for an interview, you don't ask questions about religion, you don't ask questions about age, you're not asking questions about political affiliation. All of that information may be contained on somebody's social media page, however. So if you're monitoring somebody's social media page or you review it prior to the interview process and you gather that information, you are technically getting information you should not have because it's protected. So if you discipline somebody or terminate somebody or do not hire somebody, the argument can be, well, you did it because you accessed my social media page, that you had that information, that protected information that you otherwise would have. And what's the risk there? Now you can potentially have a lawsuit for discrimination under state, federal, local law. The other big issue that comes out of this, though, again, we're going to get into a lot more detail on all of these and how you can protect yourself. But one of the biggest issue that comes out of this is that we always have an employer says, we have an employee that posted something on social media. We don't like it. It basically calls our company trash. We want to fire them. It says we don't pay enough. It says we don't provide good enough benefits. We don't like that. We want them out. Just had this the other day. Well, what is the issue with that? Well, the National Labor Relations Act, which protects employees from engaging in protected concerted activity, indicates you can't fire somebody if they engage in such behaviors. And if they do, they can file an unfair labor practice charge in front of the National Labor Relations Board. So you have to be careful as an employer to not just react. You have to review the information and take steps properly pursuant to your policies, your procedures, the law, before you terminate an employee, or you can end up with potential liability. The other thing I just want to touch on, because it comes up all the time, is an employee who says, I have a First Amendment right to say and do whatever I want on the internet. That's my First Amendment right. That is wrong, right? That is not the case. Unless you work for a public entity. If you are a private employer, which my guess is the majority of people here are, your employees do not have a First Amendment right to say whatever they want to say on the internet. That means if an employee is engaging in harassment, discrimination, posting inappropriate things on the internet that impacts your workplace, there is the potential that you can terminate them for such actions. However, you have to be uniform in how you address it. So what should you do? What ultimately should you do when you're dealing with these issues? That's the last thing I want to address here. And again, we're going to go into a lot more detail on all of these things. But the last thing I want to address during this session is, what do you need to do? As a general matter, you need to comply with all laws. Anti-discrimination, there's not just state and federal. Local municipalities have different laws you need to make sure you're abiding by. The National Labor Relations Act, you have to make sure you're not disciplining somebody, terminating somebody because they've engaged in protected concerted activity. You have to have written policies. Social media, internet, email. What should those contain? Well, what is permissible? What is not permissible? What is going to happen if you violate it? What exactly are you as an employer going to do? What do you monitor? Are you monitoring everything somebody does on social media? Are you just monitoring if they do it at work? Are you monitoring their email usage, their internet usage? If people are working from home, what steps are you taking to monitor what they're doing when they're supposed to be working? All of that information should be contained in your policies. If somebody violates your policies, we have to uniformly apply them. The biggest problem we see as employment attorneys is employers do not uniformly apply their policies. We have the 40-year employee who is our biggest salesperson, and we can't get rid of them. I don't care what they do. They posted this, they did that. I can't fire them, Ed. They're integral to our business. Well, you have now set the bar. So whatever they have done is now the standard. So you have to make sure you uniformly apply your policies regardless of who committed the violation. And finally, you have to think before you act and react. A lot of employers say, I don't like what this was posted. I don't like what this says. We're going to take action against our employee. You have to make sure you're complying with the laws. We do not want to react. We want to think before we take actions. That's just a very broad overview of what I'm going to discuss in my session on December 15th. And a lot of this information is also included in the white paper, but this is a key topic for employers. And it just keeps getting more important to employers as the days pass, because every day things are going more virtual. So we have to understand what we can and cannot do as an employer to avoid legal liability. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thanks so much, Ed. So you've had a preview of all 4 of our chosen topics for 2020. It's a way to close out the year, re-engage our business plans, and move forward in 2021. Again, this guide is exclusive for NAILBA members. It's designed for managing principals and next-gen leaders. As you can see, there's a wide array of topics. We went through the highlights. The great thing about this conference being virtual is that you won't have to worry about overlapping workshops when you want to see all of them, which typically happens in person. Now you get to see all of them, and in the NAILBA Business Practices Guide, you get to download it and have all the steps straight from our panelists today. We thank you so much for joining us. We wish you a strong finish to 2020. And again, thank you to NAILBA. And once again, thank you to North American for your continued support of this program. Enjoy the conference, everybody.